Machiavelli at work, the one obedience trigger in meetings, and the ethical, the constant hum of notifications, the endless scroll, the pressure to perform, to achieve, to be something more. We live in an age saturated with stimuli, yet often find ourselves adrift in a sea of quiet desperation. We chase external validation, mistaking fleeting achievements for enduring fulfillment. We meticulously plan our futures, only to find ourselves trapped by the present, unable to truly inhabit the moments that constitute our lives. Have you ever felt that gnawing sense of disconnect, that persistent whisper suggesting something vital is missing, even amidst apparent success? It's a feeling as old as humanity itself, a testament to our innate yearning for something deeper, something more authentic than the curated realities we often present and consume. We are bombarded with messages telling us how to live, what to desire, and what happiness looks like. Yet the path to genuine contentment remains elusive, shrouded in the very noise we seek to escape. This isn't a new predicament. It's a modern manifestation of an ancient philosophical puzzle. How do we navigate the labyrinth of existence and find not just a way through, but a way to ourselves, to a life imbued with meaning and purpose, rather than simply a life lived? The paradox is that in our relentless pursuit of control, in our desperate attempts to engineer our happiness and master our destinies, we often lose sight of the very essence of living. We become spectators in our own lives, observing our experiences rather than fully participating in them. This disengagement, this subtle yet pervasive alienation, is the invisible current pulling us away from the shore of genuine selfhood. It's the subtle anxiety that arises when we question the foundations of our choices, the quiet unease that surfaces when the carefully constructed edifice of our identity begins to reveal its cracks. We are, in essence, engaged in a perpetual battle against the inherent uncertainties of life, seeking to impose order on chaos, to find solid ground in a constantly shifting landscape. This quest for control, while understandable, often leads us down a path of perpetual dissatisfaction. We strive for certainty in an inherently uncertain world, and in doing so, we build walls around ourselves, inadvertently shutting out the very experiences that could lead to growth and profound connection. The fear of vulnerability, the dread of the unknown, compels us to armor ourselves, to present a facade of unshakable competence, even when we feel anything but. This striving for an idealized self, a self that is always in command, always composed, is a powerful illusion that can leave us feeling more isolated than ever. We become so adept at managing our outward appearances that we lose touch with the raw, unedited reality of our inner lives. The quiet moments, the ones that offer the greatest potential for self-discovery, are often the ones we flee from, filling them with distractions, with the incessant chatter of the external world, lest we be forced to confront what lies within. This avoidance, this subtle act of self-deception, creates a chasm between who we believe we should be and who we actually are, a gap that fuels our anxieties and perpetuates our sense of unease. We are caught in a feedback loop, seeking comfort in external validation while simultaneously pushing away the internal work that could lead to lasting peace. Consider the modern workplace, a microcosm of this larger struggle. In meetings, the pressure to appear decisive, to project an air of unwavering authority is immense. A single misstep, a moment of perceived uncertainty, can be interpreted as weakness, as a lack of preparedness. This environment often rewards a performative certainty, a confident pronouncement that masks any underlying doubt or hesitation. We learn to speak with conviction, even when our own convictions are shaky, to present solutions before fully understanding the problem, all in service of maintaining an image of control. This is not merely about professional success. It's a deeply ingrained human tendency to seek validation through perceived mastery. We are conditioned to believe that vulnerability is a liability, that admitting ignorance is a failure. This ingrained response, while perhaps serving a purpose in certain hierarchical structures, comes at a profound cost to our authenticity and our ability to genuinely connect with others. We become skilled actors, playing roles that are increasingly divorced from our true selves, leading to a pervasive sense of emptiness, a feeling that no matter how much we achieve, it's never quite enough. The pursuit of external approval becomes an insatiable hunger, a desperate attempt to fill an inner void that can only truly be addressed from within. This dynamic, this performance of control, is not exclusive to the boardroom. It permeates our personal lives as well. We curate our social media feeds, presenting highlight reels of our successes, carefully editing out the mundane, the difficult, the messy realities of everyday existence. We seek reassurance in the likes and comments, mistaking digital affirmation for genuine connection. We engage in conversations, often anticipating the next point, formulating our responses before the other person has even finished speaking, not out of genuine engagement, but out of a desire to appear intelligent, to win the exchange, to maintain an image of intellectual superiority. This constant vigilance, this need to perform, exhausts us. It prevents us from truly listening, from truly empathizing, from truly being present in the moments that matter most. We are so focused on the outward projection of a flawless self that we neglect the cultivation of the inner self, the self that is capable of genuine growth, of profound love, of authentic connection. The very mechanisms we employ to feel more secure and validated often serve to isolate us, creating a gilded cage of our own making, where we are admired from afar but rarely truly known. The consequence of this relentless pursuit of control and outward perfection is a creeping sense of existential unease. We feel like imposters in our own lives, constantly waiting to be found out, to have our carefully constructed facade crumble. This fear of exposure, this underlying anxiety, can manifest in various ways. Procrastination, perfectionism, a tendency to overcommit, or conversely, a profound inertia born of the fear of making the wrong move. We become paralyzed by the weight of our own expectations, the expectations we believe others have of us. We are so busy managing the narrative of our lives that we forget to actually live them. The richness of human experience, with its inherent messiness, its moments of profound joy and deep sorrow, its unexpected detours and quiet epiphanies, is often sacrificed at the altar of perceived competence and control. We become so adept at navigating the superficial that we lose our capacity for the profound. This is the silent crisis of our time. Not a lack of information or opportunity, but a deficit of authentic self-awareness and a profound disconnect from our own inner lives. We are adrift, seeking a compass in a world that offers only a cacophony of directions, each promising fulfillment, but often leading us further into confusion. It is within this context, this pervasive feeling of disconnection and the relentless pressure to perform, that we begin to explore a different path, a path that doesn't promise to eliminate uncertainty or guarantee control, but rather to reframe our relationship with both. A path that suggests true strength lies not in the absence of vulnerability, but in its courageous embrace. A path that whispers that meaning is not found in achieving a perfect outward projection, but in the quiet, often uncomfortable work of looking inward. This journey is not about acquiring new techniques or mastering new strategies. It is about cultivating a different way of being, a way of engaging with ourselves and the world that is rooted in authenticity rather than performance. It is about understanding the subtle ways we abdicate our own agency, the unconscious patterns that drive us to seek external validation, and the profound liberation that comes from recognizing our inherent worth, independent of our achievements or the opinions of others. We will delve into the philosophies that have grappled with these questions for millennia, not to find definitive answers, but to illuminate the landscape of our own inner lives, to equip ourselves with the insights necessary to navigate the complexities of modern existence with greater wisdom, grace, and a profound sense of self-possession. This is an invitation to quiet the external noise and listen to the deeper currents of your own being. The notion of the self as a stable, unified entity is a cornerstone of our everyday experience, yet it's a concept that has been profoundly challenged by philosophical and psychological inquiry. We instinctively feel that there is an I at the center of our consciousness, a consistent observer and actor across time. However, this sense of a singular, unwavering self can be an illusion, a narrative construct rather than an intrinsic reality. Think about the subtle shifts in your personality, your values, your very sense of who you are that occur over years, even months. The person you were a decade ago might feel like a stranger in some ways, yet we still attribute a continuous identity to them and to ourselves. This persistent feeling of continuity, while psychologically comforting, can obscure the fluid, ever-changing nature of our inner lives. The self, rather than being a fixed point, might be more akin to a river constantly flowing, its currents shaped by myriad influences, yet maintaining a recognizable form. This perspective doesn't diminish our lived experience. Instead, it invites a deeper appreciation for the dynamic processes that constitute our being. This idea finds a powerful echo in the work of thinkers like David Hume, who argued that when we introspect, we find only a succession of perceptions, thoughts, feelings, sensations, but no enduring, unified self to which these perceptions belong. He likened the mind to a theatre where perceptions make their appearance, pass, repass, glide about and mingle together, but there is no simple, perpetual substance that is the theatre itself. This radical notion suggests that our feeling of a continuous self is a kind of mental habit, a convenient shorthand our minds create to make sense of the world and our place within it. We stitch together disparate moments and experiences into a coherent story, a biography that grants us a sense of identity and agency. Without this narrative, the sheer complexity and flux of existence could be overwhelming. Consequently, we cling to this constructed self, often defending it fiercely even when it no longer serves us, because the alternative, acknowledging its illusory nature, can feel like an existential threat. Furthermore, the concept of the shadow self, as explored by Carl Jung, introduces another layer to this understanding. Jung posited that the self is not merely the conscious persona we present to the world, but a far more complex totality that includes repressed desires, unacknowledged fears, and instincts that we deem unacceptable. This shadow, often projected onto others, represents the aspects of ourselves that we disown, the parts that don't fit our idealized self-image. For instance, an individual who meticulously cultivates an image of unwavering kindness might, in moments of stress or perceived injustice, harbor intense, unexpressed anger. This anger, if unacknowledged and integrated, can fester in the shadow, influencing behavior in indirect and often destructive ways. The integration of the shadow is not about eradicating these aspects, but about recognizing and understanding them, bringing them into conscious awareness so they no longer wield unconscious power over us. This process of shadow work, while challenging, is essential for achieving a more complete and authentic sense of self, one that acknowledges the full spectrum of human experience, both light and dark. Consider how this plays out in our relationships. When we encounter someone who embodies traits we find particularly irritating or reprehensible, it's often a reflection of our own disowned shadow. If we are quick to judge someone's perceived laziness, it might be because we are denying our own tendencies towards inertia. Conversely, if we are drawn to someone's boldness, it might be because we have suppressed our own capacity for assertiveness. This projection mechanism allows us to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths about ourselves, but it also creates barriers to genuine connection. We see others not as they truly are, but as vessels onto which we project our own internal conflicts. The effort required to maintain these projections is immense, leading to emotional exhaustion and a perpetual state of subtle interpersonal friction. Recognizing this tendency is the first step towards dismantling these projections, allowing for more honest and open engagement with others, and by extension, a more integrated understanding of ourselves. It's about shifting from a defensive posture to one of curious exploration, both internally and externally. The practical application of this understanding lies in cultivating a practice of mindful self-inquiry, not in the service of self-improvement or the achievement of some idealized state, but simply for the sake of greater awareness. When you find yourself reacting strongly to a situation or a person, pause and ask, what part of this is reflecting something within me? This isn't about self-blame, it's about curiosity and the pursuit of a more complete self-knowledge. It involves observing your thoughts and feelings without judgment, recognizing them as transient phenomena rather than definitive statements about your core identity. For example, when you experience a surge of envy towards a colleague's success, instead of immediately suppressing it or allowing it to fester, acknowledge it. Recognize the feeling, understand its potential roots, perhaps a feeling of inadequacy or a fear of being overlooked, and then consciously choose not to let it dictate your actions or your perception of yourself or your colleague. This deliberate act of observation and non-judgmental acceptance is a powerful way to reclaim agency over your internal landscape, allowing you to respond to life with greater intentionality rather than being driven by unconscious impulses. This ongoing process of deconstructing the illusion of a fixed self and integrating its various, often contradictory facets offers a pathway to profound liberation. It frees us from the exhausting burden of maintaining a singular, perfect persona. It allows us to embrace the inherent contradictions and complexities of our being, recognizing that growth comes not from eliminating perceived flaws, but from understanding and integrating them. By doing so, we move towards a more fluid, resilient, and authentic existence, one that is less about being a static entity and more about the continuous unfolding process of becoming. This journey requires patience, courage, and a willingness to sit with discomfort, but the reward is a richer, more nuanced, and ultimately more fulfilling engagement with life itself. It is in this space of dynamic becoming that we find not a fixed identity, but a profound sense of aliveness. The relentless pursuit of external validation, while often disguised as ambition or a desire for success, can be understood as a profound form of external dependency. We become like instruments played by unseen hands, our moods and self-worth dictated by the fluctuating approval of others. This is not to dismiss the natural human need for connection and belonging, but to differentiate it from a state where our very sense of self is contingent upon the opinions and accolades of the outside world. When our internal compass is miscalibrated, pointing solely towards external markers of worth, we risk losing our capacity for independent judgment and genuine self-appreciation. The quiet whispers of our own intuition become drowned out by the clamor of external expectations, leading to a life lived in perpetual reactive mode, always adjusting our sails to catch the prevailing winds of popular opinion or perceived success. This outward focus, while seemingly pragmatic, can lead to an insidious form of self-estrangement, where we become strangers to our own deepest desires and values. Building on this, however, consider the insidious nature of comparison culture, a phenomenon amplified by the curated realities presented on social media. We are constantly bombarded with idealized portrayals of others' lives, their achievements, their relationships, their material possessions. This creates an environment where our own experiences are perpetually measured against an often unrealistic benchmark, fostering feelings of inadequacy and discontent. The subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, pressure to keep up can lead individuals to make choices that are misaligned with their authentic selves, all in an effort to project an image of success and contentment. This can manifest in a myriad of ways, from overspending to achieve a certain lifestyle, to pursuing careers that offer prestige but little personal fulfillment, to engaging in relationships that are built on superficial compatibility rather than deep emotional resonance. The energy expended in maintaining this facade is immense, leaving little room for the introspection and self-care necessary for genuine well-being. It's a cycle that perpetuates itself, as the temporary validation derived from external approval only serves to reinforce the underlying dependency. Another crucial layer is the psychological mechanism of locus of control. Individuals with an external locus of control tend to believe that their outcomes are determined by outside forces, luck, fate, other people, while those with an internal locus believe they have agency and can influence their own lives through their actions and choices. When we are overly reliant on external validation, our locus of control effectively shifts outward. We attribute our successes to fortunate circumstances or the approval of others, and our failures to external criticism or misfortune. This can lead to a disempowering mindset, where we feel like passive recipients of life's circumstances rather than active participants in shaping our own destinies. Consequently, opportunities for personal growth and self-discovery are often missed, as the belief that one can effect meaningful change is undermined. This can create a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the expectation of external determination leads to a lack of proactive engagement, which in turn reinforces the belief that one has little control. Consequently, the practice of cultivating an internal locus of control becomes paramount in counteracting this dependency. This involves actively identifying and challenging the beliefs and thought patterns that attribute outcomes to external factors. For instance, if you receive positive feedback on a project, instead of simply thinking, "the boss liked it," try reframing it as, "my hard work and careful planning resulted in a successful outcome which was recognized." This subtle shift in perspective reinforces the connection between your actions and the positive results. Similarly, when facing setbacks, rather than dwelling on external blame, ask, "What could I have done differently? What can I learn from this experience to improve next time?" This deliberate redirection of focus towards personal agency, even in the face of challenging circumstances, is a powerful tool for fostering resilience and reclaiming a sense of self-determination. It is through these conscious choices of perspective that we begin to rebuild our internal compass. Furthermore, this internal shift has profound implications for how we navigate interpersonal dynamics. When our self-worth is internally anchored, we are less susceptible to the manipulative tactics that prey on external dependency. We can set healthier boundaries, express our needs more directly, and engage in relationships that are based on mutual respect rather than a desperate need for approval. Consider a situation where a friend or colleague consistently makes unreasonable demands. An externally validated individual might struggle to say no, fearing rejection or disapproval. Conversely, someone with a strong internal locus of control can assess the request based on their own values and capacity and articulate their boundaries with clarity and confidence, understanding that their worth is not diminished by their refusal. This is not about being rigid or uncooperative, but about operating from a place of self-respect and authenticity, fostering more balanced and sustainable relationships. This journey of detaching from external validation and strengthening our internal locus of control is not a destination, but an ongoing practice. It requires consistent self-awareness and a willingness to confront the deeply ingrained habits of seeking approval from the outside. It is about recognizing that true fulfillment arises not from the applause of the crowd, but from the quiet resonance of living in alignment with our own deepest values and principles. This internal alignment, once cultivated, provides a stable foundation upon which genuine confidence and lasting contentment can be built, freeing us from the exhausting cycle of seeking external affirmation. The very fabric of our perceived reality is woven with threads of narrative, and it is within these self-constructed stories that our sense of purpose often resides. Yet these narratives, while providing structure and meaning, can also become prisons, limiting our capacity for growth and adaptation. The story we tell ourselves about who we are, where we've come from, and where we're going is not necessarily a faithful representation of objective truth, but rather a selective interpretation shaped by our experiences, beliefs, and desires. This interpretive lens, while essential for navigating the complexities of life, can also blind us to alternative possibilities and stifle our willingness to embrace the unknown. When we become too attached to a particular narrative, any challenge to it can feel like a personal attack, triggering defensive mechanisms and hindering our ability to consider new perspectives. Consider the profound impact of narrative identity on our decision-making. We often choose paths that align with the story we've already written for ourselves, even if those paths are no longer serving us. For instance, someone who has built their identity around being a problem solver might find themselves perpetually seeking out challenges, sometimes even creating them to maintain this self-definition. This can lead to a life of constant struggle, not because challenges are inherently bad, but because the need to embody a particular narrative overrides the wisdom of seeking peace, rest, or different forms of contribution. The narrative becomes a gilded cage, offering a sense of coherence, but ultimately restricting the full expression of one's potential. This attachment to a specific self-story can make us resistant to change, even when change is precisely what is needed for personal evolution. Furthermore, the concept of narrative coherence highlights our deep-seated desire for our life stories to make sense. We strive to connect the dots, to find causality and meaning in seemingly random events, often imposing order where none might objectively exist. This drive for coherence can lead us to oversimplify complex situations, to create heroes and villains where nuanced characters might be more accurate, and to dismiss experiences that don't fit neatly into our pre-existing framework. This is not to say that meaning-making is inherently flawed. Rather, it is the rigidity with which we cling to certain narrative structures that can be detrimental. When a narrative becomes too fixed, it ceases to be a tool for understanding and becomes a barrier to experiencing the richness and unpredictability of life. The stories we tell ourselves are powerful, but they are also malleable. And recognizing this malleability is key to unlocking new possibilities. Now consider how this applies when you face a significant life transition, such as a career change or the end of a relationship. Instead of immediately trying to force the new circumstances into your existing life narrative, try to step back and observe the situation as a new chapter, one that is yet to be fully written. Ask yourself, what new story could emerge from this experience? What aspects of myself, previously dormant or unexpressed, might this transition allow to come to the fore? This shift in perspective encourages a more fluid and adaptable approach to life, allowing you to embrace the unfolding journey rather than resisting it because it doesn't fit the script you've been following. It's about recognizing that your life is not a static autobiography, but a dynamic, ongoing novel with the potential for unexpected plot twists and character development. This process of narrative deconstruction and reconstruction is not about erasing your past or denying your experiences, but about gaining a more conscious and discerning relationship with the stories that shape your present and future. It involves the courage to question the assumptions embedded within your current narrative, to explore alternative interpretations of your past, and to entertain the possibility of a future that might look very different from what you've previously imagined. By loosening our grip on a singular, rigid life story, we open ourselves up to a more expansive and authentic existence, one that is less about fitting into a predefined mold and more about embracing the beautiful, messy, and ever-evolving tapestry of our lived experience. It is through this conscious reauthoring that we reclaim our agency and move towards a more profound sense of purpose, one that is not imposed but discovered. The relentless pursuit of external validation, while often disguised as ambition or a desire for success, can be understood as a profound form of external dependency. We become like instruments played by unseen hands, our moods and self-worth dictated by the fluctuating approval of others. This is not to dismiss the natural human need for connection and belonging, but to differentiate it from a state where our very sense of self is contingent upon the opinions and accolades of the outside world. When our internal compass is miscalibrated, pointing solely towards external markers of worth, we risk losing our capacity for independent judgment and genuine self-appreciation. The quiet whispers of our own intuition become drowned out by the clamor of external expectations, leading to a life lived in perpetual reactive mode, always adjusting our sails to catch the prevailing winds of popular opinion or perceived success. This outward focus, while seemingly pragmatic, can lead to an insidious form of self-estrangement, where we become strangers to our own deepest desires and values. Building on this, however, consider the insidious nature of comparison culture, a phenomenon amplified by the curated realities presented on social media. We are constantly bombarded with idealized portrayals of others' lives, their achievements, their relationships, their material possessions. This creates an environment where our own experiences are perpetually measured against an often unrealistic benchmark, fostering feelings of inadequacy and discontent. The subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, pressure to keep up can lead individuals to make choices that are misaligned with their authentic selves, all in an effort to project an image of success and contentment. This can manifest in a myriad of ways, from overspending to achieve a certain lifestyle, to pursuing careers that offer prestige but little personal fulfillment, to engaging in relationships that are built on superficial compatibility rather than deep emotional resonance. The energy expended in maintaining this facade is immense, leaving little room for the introspection and self-care necessary for genuine well-being. It's a cycle that perpetuates itself, as the temporary validation derived from external approval only serves to reinforce the underlying dependency. Another crucial layer is the psychological mechanism of locus of control. Individuals with an external locus of control tend to believe that their outcomes are determined by outside forces, luck, fate, other people, while those with an internal locus believe they have agency and can influence their own lives through their actions and choices. When we are overly reliant on external validation, our locus of control effectively shifts outward. We attribute our successes to fortunate circumstances or the approval of others, and our failures to external criticism or misfortune. This can lead to a disempowering mindset, where we feel like passive recipients of life's circumstances rather than active participants in shaping our own destinies. Consequently, opportunities for personal growth and self-discovery are often missed, as the belief that one can effect meaningful change is undermined. This can create a self-fulfilling prophecy where the expectation of external determination leads to a lack of proactive engagement, which in turn reinforces the belief that one has little control. Consequently, the practice of cultivating an internal locus of control becomes paramount in counteracting this dependency. This involves actively identifying and challenging the beliefs and thought patterns that attribute outcomes to external factors. For instance, if you receive positive feedback on a project, instead of simply thinking, "the boss liked it," try reframing it as, "my hard work and careful planning resulted in a successful outcome which was recognized." This subtle shift in perspective reinforces the connection between your actions and the positive results. Similarly, when facing setbacks, rather than dwelling on external blame, ask, "What could I have done differently? What can I learn from this experience to improve next time?" This deliberate redirection of focus towards personal agency, even in the face of challenging circumstances, is a powerful tool for fostering resilience and reclaiming a sense of self-determination. It is through these conscious choices of perspective that we begin to rebuild our internal compass. Furthermore, this internal shift has profound implications for how we navigate interpersonal dynamics. When our self-worth is internally anchored, we are less susceptible to the manipulative tactics that prey on external dependency. We can set healthier boundaries, express our needs more directly, and engage in relationships that are based on mutual respect rather than a desperate need for approval. Consider a situation where a friend or colleague consistently makes unreasonable demands. An externally validated individual might struggle to say no, fearing rejection or disapproval. Conversely, someone with a strong internal locus of control can assess the request based on their own values and capacity and articulate their boundaries with clarity and confidence, understanding that their worth is not diminished by their refusal. This is not about being rigid or uncooperative, but about operating from a place of self-respect and authenticity, fostering more balanced and sustainable relationships. This journey of detaching from external validation and strengthening our internal locus of control is not a destination, but an ongoing practice. It requires consistent self-awareness and a willingness to confront the deeply ingrained habits of seeking approval from the outside. It is about recognizing that true fulfillment arises not from the applause of the crowd, but from the quiet resonance of living in alignment with our own deepest values and principles. This internal alignment, once cultivated, provides a stable foundation upon which genuine confidence and lasting contentment can be built, freeing us from the exhausting cycle of seeking external affirmation. The landscape of human experience is not merely shaped by external forces or internal narratives, but also by the very structures of our awareness. Beyond the conscious self we present and the subconscious depths we explore lies the fundamental question of how we perceive and process information. This is where the philosophy of phenomenology offers a unique lens. Instead of focusing on what the self is, phenomenology asks us to examine the lived experience of consciousness itself, the raw, unmediated encounter with the world. It's about bracketing our assumptions, our theories, and our preconceived notions to attend to the phenomena as they present themselves to our awareness. This involves a radical form of attention, a deep listening to the immediate reality of our sensations, emotions, and thoughts, without immediately categorizing or judging them. It's the difference between seeing a tree and immediately thinking, "That's an oak, good for shade," versus simply experiencing the visual presence of the tree, its colors, its form, the way light plays upon its leaves before any conceptual overlay occurs. This phenomenological approach challenges the very notion of a detached observer. It suggests that consciousness is not a passive receptacle for external data, but an active, intentional engagement with the world. When we experience something, our consciousness is always directed towards that something. This intentionality means that our experience is always relational. We are never just aware. We are aware of something. For example, when you feel anxious, you are not simply experiencing a feeling in isolation. Your anxiety is directed towards a specific concern, a potential future event, a perceived threat. Phenomenology encourages us to explore the nuances of this directedness, to understand the specific way in which our consciousness constitutes the meaning of our experiences. It's about understanding the how of our awareness, not just the what. This focus on the structure of experience itself can reveal patterns of perception that operate beneath our conscious thought, influencing our reactions and interpretations in ways we might not otherwise recognize. Furthermore, consider the concept of embodiment within phenomenology. It posits that our consciousness is not disembodied, floating somewhere in the ether, but is fundamentally tied to our physical bodies and our interactions with the physical world. Our body is not merely a vessel for our mind, it is the very medium through which we experience and understand reality. The way we move through space, the sensations we feel, the limitations and capacities of our physical form all shape our conscious experience. For instance, the feeling of fatigue is not just a mental state. It is a bodily sensation that profoundly influences our thoughts, our motivation, and our perception of time. Similarly, the act of reaching for an object involves a complex interplay between our intention, our bodily movements, and our perception of the object's spatial relationship to us. Phenomenology emphasizes that these embodied experiences are not secondary to conscious thought, but are foundational to it. Now think about how this understanding of embodied awareness can be applied to managing stress. Instead of solely focusing on cognitive reframing or mindfulness techniques that primarily engage the mind, we can also attend to the bodily sensations associated with stress. When you feel tension in your shoulders, tightness in your chest, or a knot in your stomach, instead of immediately trying to intellectualize the stress away, try to simply feel those sensations. Where are they located? What is their quality? Sharp, dull, pulsing? What happens if you gently breathe into that sensation, not to eliminate it, but to acknowledge its presence? This practice of embodied attention allows us to develop a more direct and less judgmental relationship with our physical responses to stress. It recognizes that the body holds a wisdom of its own, and by attending to its signals, we can gain deeper insights into our internal states and develop more integrated coping mechanisms. This is not about ignoring the mental aspects of stress, but about recognizing that the mind and body are inextricably linked, and that working with the body can profoundly influence our mental and emotional well-being. This direct engagement with phenomena, this bracketing of our preconceptions, can also lead to a more authentic appreciation of beauty and art. When we encounter a piece of music, a painting, or a poem, our initial reaction might be to categorize it, to compare it to other works, or to judge its technical merit. Phenomenology invites us to suspend these analytical processes and simply allow the artwork to present itself to our senses and our emotions. What are the specific colors and forms that capture your attention in a painting? How does the rhythm and melody of a piece of music evoke a particular feeling within you? By attending to these immediate, pre-conceptual responses, we can experience art on a deeper, more visceral level, allowing it to resonate with us in ways that intellectual analysis might miss. This practice of open, attentive perception can enrich our engagement with the aesthetic world, and by extension, with the world at large, revealing layers of meaning and beauty that are often overlooked in our haste to categorize and understand. The human psyche, in its intricate dance between conscious intent and unconscious drive, often grapples with the concept of authenticity. We yearn to be true to ourselves, yet the very definition of self remains fluid. shaped by myriad influences. One particularly potent influence, often overlooked in our quest for genuine selfhood, is the subtle yet pervasive impact of archetypal patterns. These universal, primordial images and themes, as described by figures like Carl Jung, are not mere figments of imagination, but deeply embedded structures within the collective unconscious, influencing our perceptions, motivations, and life trajectories. They manifest as recurring motifs in myths, dreams, and fairy tales across cultures and epochs, offering blueprints for human experience. For instance, the hero's journey archetype, present in stories from ancient epics to modern blockbusters, speaks to our innate drive to face challenges, undergo transformation, and return with newfound wisdom. When we unconsciously align with such archetypes, our lives can take on a sense of epic proportion, imbuing our actions with a significance that transcends the mundane. Conversely, a misidentification with an archetype or a failure to engage with its transformative potential can lead to a sense of stagnation or a life that feels inauthentic, like a role being played rather than a life being lived. Consider the archetype of the wise old man or the great mother. These figures represent profound wisdom, nurturing guidance, and unconditional acceptance. When an individual unconsciously embodies aspects of the wise old man, they might find themselves naturally drawn to mentorship, offering counsel and insight to others. This can be a deeply fulfilling path, aligning with a fundamental human need to share knowledge and guide future generations. However, if this archetype is not consciously integrated or balanced with other aspects of the personality, it can lead to an overbearing paternalism or a detachment from the practical realities of everyday life. Similarly, an unconscious alignment with the Great Mother archetype might manifest as an intense desire to nurture and care for others, a powerful drive that can bring immense satisfaction. Yet without a conscious understanding of its boundaries, this can lead to enmeshment, a blurring of self and other, where the individual's own needs are neglected in service of their nurturing role. The key lies not in suppressing these archetypal influences, but in bringing them into conscious awareness, understanding their power, and choosing how they will inform our lives rather than dictate them. Furthermore, the concept of shadow integration becomes particularly relevant when exploring archetypes. Often, the darker, more primal aspects of these universal patterns remain unacknowledged, residing in the shadow of our unconscious. For example, the hero archetype, while embodying courage and righteousness, also carries the potential for arrogance, aggression, and a disregard for consequences. If we only embrace the heroic aspect without acknowledging its shadow, we risk becoming reckless or tyrannical in our pursuit of perceived justice. The process of shadow integration involves consciously confronting these disowned aspects, understanding their origins, and finding ways to integrate them into our conscious personality in a balanced and constructive manner. This is not about eradicating the shadow, but about acknowledging its existence and harnessing its energy constructively, rather than allowing it to operate unconsciously and destructively. The refusal to engage with the shadow aspects of archetypes can lead to a fractured sense of self, where one part of the personality is idealized, while another, equally vital part is repressed, leading to internal conflict and a pervasive sense of inauthenticity. Now consider how this plays out in your own life when you encounter situations that evoke strong, almost instinctual reactions. Perhaps you find yourself repeatedly drawn to leadership roles, or conversely, you consistently shy away from the spotlight. These inclinations might be more than just personal preferences. They could be expressions of underlying archetypal patterns at play. When faced with such a pattern, instead of simply acting it out, pause and ask, what universal theme or image does this situation evoke in me? Am I embodying a particular archetype? And if so, am I consciously choosing to do so, or am I being unconsciously driven by it? For instance, if you find yourself in a situation that mirrors a classic rescuer narrative, where you feel compelled to step in and solve everyone's problems, explore the underlying archetype. Is this a conscious choice to help, or an unconscious drive stemming from the savior archetype, which might carry its own set of unexamined burdens and expectations? By asking these questions, you begin to differentiate between genuine self-expression and archetypal possession, gaining the agency to choose your path with greater clarity and intention. The profound implication of this journey is the realization that the most significant transformations arise not from grand external gestures, but from subtle internal shifts in perspective. It is in the quiet moments of self-inquiry, in the conscious choice to question our ingrained patterns, and in the courageous embrace of our full, unvarnished selves, that lasting change takes root. We are not merely passive recipients of our experiences. We are active co-creators of our reality. The power to imbue our lives with meaning, purpose, and genuine contentment resides not in external accolades or the approval of others, but in the profound, often understated work of understanding and honoring our own inner compass. The true practice begins now, in the everyday moments, in the quiet unfolding of consciousness, in the courageous act of living.